Introduction to School Counselling. An introduction to counselling. Many psychologists use the terms counselling and psychotherapy interchangeably, and some of them conclude that there are no essential differences upon which agreement can be reached. Both counselling and psychotherapy use the same theoretical models and stress the need to value the client as a person, to listen sympathetically, to hear what is communicated, and to foster the capacity for self-help and responsibility. In Britain, there has been a recent development emphasizing the similarities between counselling and psychotherapy. In 2000, the British Association for Counselling changed its name to become the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, BACP. A prime reason for this was that many of its members already considered themselves psychotherapists. For instance, though work with clients may have considerable depth, the focus of counselling is more likely to be on specific problems or changes in life adjustment, with psychotherapy more concerned with the restructuring of the personality or self. Psychotherapists are more likely to work very intensively with more deeply disturbed individuals who are frequently seen over a long period of time. Counselors are more likely to work in specific areas where specialized knowledge and method are needed. For instance, marital and family counseling and school counseling. Regarding professional counselors and therapists, two further points are worthy of mention. A number of people, such as some social workers and nurses, combine professional qualifications in their primary role with professional qualifications in counseling and psychotherapy. Completion of an approved course in counseling and psychotherapy training can no longer be equated with accreditation, since increasingly professional counselors and psychotherapists are required to undertake mandatory continuing professional development (CPD) requirements by their professional associations if they are to achieve and maintain accreditation. What is counseling? The term counseling is used in a number of ways. One dimension is related to the people who counsel. Other considerations for defining counseling include viewing it as a relationship, a repertoire of interventions, a psychological process, and in terms of its goals and clienteles. The British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy makes a clear distinction between counselling skills used by staff in schools and the process of counselling provided by counsellors. Counselling takes place when a counsellor sees a client in a private and confidential setting to explore a difficulty the client is having, distress they may be experiencing, or perhaps their dissatisfaction with life, or loss of a sense of direction and purpose. It is always at the request of the client, as no one can properly be sent for counselling. By listening attentively and patiently, the counsellor can begin to perceive the difficulties from the client's point of view and can help them to see things more clearly, possibly from a different perspective. Counselling is a way of enabling choice or change, or of reducing confusion. It does not involve giving advice or directing a client to take a particular course of action. Counselors do not judge or exploit their clients in any way. In the counseling sessions, the client can explore various aspects of their life and feelings, talking about them freely and openly in a way that is rarely possible with friends or family. Bottled up feelings such as anger, anxiety, grief and embarrassment can become very intense, and counseling offers an opportunity to explore them, with the possibility of making them easier to understand. The counselor will encourage the expression of feelings, and as a result of their training, will be able to accept and reflect the client's problems without becoming burdened by them. Counseling in schools. Counseling in schools is a specialist activity and a rapidly growing phenomenon. As such, all involved need to be aware of the need to ensure that services operate to high standards and are accountable. Schools are now employing counselors to help them address the emotional needs that children and young people can have in response to experiences such as family breakdown and reconfiguration, bereavement, loss, family and peer relationship difficulties, anxiety and bullying. Counseling can be an effective source of support for these pupils, enabling them to function better both in and outside of school, enhancing their resilience and giving them resources to manage any future difficulties. The Department for Education and Schools, DFES, has stated that counseling is one of the important elements of support to be considered for children and young people with emotional and behavioral difficulties. This is in line with the government's recognition of the importance of early intervention and preventative strategies as demonstrated by programs such as Early Years and Sure Start. The availability of counseling can affect the school as an institution, and not just individual pupils. A good school is judged not by its lack of problems, but by its ability to deal effectively with those problems that arise. Counseling services that have been provided in schools inspected by the Office of Standards in Education, OFSTED, have been shown to complement pastoral care systems, support teachers' care of children and young people, and their management of those with emotional and behavioral difficulties, offer training to teachers in counseling skills and stress management, provide consultation, training, support and supervision of strategies to counteract problems such as bullying and truancy, influence drug and sex education policies within a confidential framework, contribute to the personal and social education curriculum, support effective child protection procedures. Differences between teachers and school counselors. There are significant differences between the professional culture of teachers and that of counselors. Teachers will often need to have regard for the needs of a class, or a cohort of pupils, or the school as a whole, while the therapist's immediate focus may well be more on the distress being experienced by a single child or young person. Teachers work within a particular organizational and legal framework, with specific legal obligations set out by statute and by circulars and guidance from the national government. Counselors need to be well informed about these obligations. While both teachers and counselors will want to promote the overall well-being of the children and young people in their charge, therapists work to a different set of ethical obligations that emphasize the complexity of balancing professional duties, the rights of the child as a client, and wider social responsibilities. Counselors provide counseling as part of the pastoral care within the school and represent an immediate, on-site response for those pupils who need the additional expertise that counseling brings to the overall pastoral support system. Counselors working in schools can also provide training, consultation and support for staff in the way they use counseling skills to support the pupils. The skills of listening and attending in a relationship of trust and respect contribute greatly to good communication within the school community.